Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the endless black space through the bridge window of his cargo ship Independence. 3 months of hauling supplies between remote outposts had worn him down. His small crew was getting restless, too. Chief Engineer Lisa Hayes complained daily about the ship's old engines, while Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez spent most of his time playing card games with the other crew members. The Independence was not much to look at. She was an old cargo vessel, built for moving goods rather than exploring space. Her hull showed dents and scratches from years of service. The paint was fading, and some of the equipment made strange noises. But she was home to Jake and his crew of 12 people. They were heading back to Kepler Station, a small human outpost on the edge of known space. Kepler Station was not important enough to get the newest supplies or the best equipment. It was the kind of place where old cargo ships like the Independence made their living, carrying things that bigger, faster ships would not bother with. Danny suddenly sat up straight at his control panel. "Captain, I'm getting something weird on the sensors." Jake walked over to look at Danny's screen. "What kind of weird?" "There's something big out there, maybe 2 hours away at our current speed. It's not moving, just floating in space. The metal signature is huge, but I'm not getting any power readings." Lisa Hayes climbed up from the engine room, wiping oil from her hands. "Did someone say something interesting finally happened on this boring trip?" Jake studied the sensor readings. Whatever was out there was massive, much bigger than the Independence. Could be a derelict ship. Might be worth checking out. "Or it could be a trap," said Lisa. "Remember what happened to crew of the Frontier when they investigated that mysterious signal?" Danny shook his head. "This is different. I'm not picking up any active systems. Whatever it is, it's been dead in space for a long time." Jake made his decision. "Change course. Take us in slow and careful. Lisa, I want all systems ready in case we need to run. Danny, keep scanning. If anything changes, anything at all, you tell me immediately." The Independence turned toward the mysterious object. As they got closer, the sensors revealed more details. It was definitely a ship, and it was enormous. The hull was dark and scarred, with no lights showing anywhere. "Captain," Danny said quietly, "I think it's one of ours." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "Human?" "The design looks human, but it's old, really old. I've never seen anything like it in the current fleet database." Lisa pressed her face against the window as they approached. "Look at the size of that thing. It's got to be at least 3 times bigger than a modern cruiser." As they drew closer, details became visible on the massive ship's hull. The design was clearly human, but unlike anything in current service. The hull was incredibly thick, with layers of armor plating that made modern ships look fragile. Strange symbols and numbers were painted on the side, faded but still readable. Danny worked his console, running the ship's identification through every database he could access. "Captain, I found it. The USS Valiant. She was reported missing over 200 years ago." 200 years? Lisa whispered. "That's impossible. Nothing survives in space that long without maintenance." Jake ordered the Independence to match the derelict's course and speed. The 2 ships drifted together through space, one small and active, the other massive and silent. The size difference was amazing. The Valiant was like a sleeping giant compared to their cargo ship. "I'm picking up faint energy readings," Danny reported. "Very faint, but something inside that ship is still working." Lisa laughed nervously. "After 2 centuries? What kind of power source could last that long?" "Only one way to find out," Jake said. "Prepare a boarding party. Lisa, you're with me. Danny, you stay here and monitor everything. If we don't check in every hour, you take the Independence back to Kepler Station and report this." They suited up in their space gear and crossed to the ancient warship through the airlocks. The Valiant's corridors were dark and cold, but their lights revealed incredible construction. The walls were thick metal, built to withstand enormous forces. Everything looked heavy and solid, designed to last. This ship was built for war, Lisa said as they explored. "Look at these blast doors. They're twice as thick as anything we use now." They found the bridge, a massive room filled with control stations that looked primitive but incredibly sturdy. Jake touched one of the consoles. and to his surprise, a few lights flickered on. "There's still power," he said in amazement. "After all this time, there's still power." Lisa was examining the engineering displays. "Jake, look at this. These aren't primitive systems. They're different from what we use now, but they're not primitive. Whoever built this ship knew exactly what they were doing. They spent an hour exploring before returning to the Independence." Jake immediately contacted Kepler Station to report their discovery. Station Commander Helen Torres was very interested in their find. "Bring her in, Captain," Torres ordered. "We'll attach tow cables and bring both ships to the station. This could be the most important historical find in decades." As they prepared to tow the massive warship, none of them noticed the small ships approaching from deep space. The Zephyrian patrol fleet had detected the energy signatures from both human vessels and was coming to investigate. War Commander Thex Vala was curious about these humans and their ancient ship. The stage was set for a meeting that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about human engineering and determination. The Independence had barely finished attaching tow cables to the USS Valiant when Danny Rodriguez called out from the station. "Captain, we have company. 3 ships approaching fast, and they're not human." Jake Morrison felt his stomach drop. They were far from any help, dragging an ancient derelict that might not even work. "What kind of ships?" "I've never seen designs like these before. They're sleek, advanced-looking. And, Captain, they're big. Each one is larger than the Valiant." Lisa Hayes climbed onto the bridge, still wearing her work clothes from examining the old warship. "Are they hostile?" "I don't think so," Danny replied, studying his screens. "They're not approaching in attack formation. It looks more like they're curious." The alien ships moved with grace that human vessels could never match. Their hulls were smooth and curved, covered in what looked like crystal panels that glowed with soft blue light. They made the Independence look like a crude metal box by comparison. A voice came to the communication system, speaking perfect English with a strange accent. "Human vessels. This is War Commander Thex Vala of the Zephyrian Fleet. We wish to speak with your leaders." Jake took a deep breath. First contact with an alien race was not something cargo ship captains were trained for. "This is Captain Morrison of the Independent. We're peaceful traders. We know of your species, Captain Morrison. We have heard that humans have established a small outpost in this region. We come in peace to learn more about your people and your technology." Within hours, the alien ships had escorted them back to Kepler Station. The station was small compared to the alien vessels, looking like a child's toy next to advanced war machines. Station Commander Helen Torres met Jake in the docking bay, her face showing worry and curiosity in equal measure. "I've never dealt with aliens before," she admitted quietly. "What are they like?" "Polite but proud," Jake replied. "They seem to think they're much more advanced than we are." The Zephyrians who came aboard the station were impressive beings. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their uniforms were clearly military, made from materials that looked both flexible and strong. War Commander Thex Vala wore decorations that showed his high rank. "We are honored to meet representatives of humanity," Thex Vala said formally. His voice was deep and measured. "We have traveled far to see what your species has accomplished in this region of space." His companion, Tactical Officer Kreenox, looked around the station with barely hidden amusement. "Your construction methods are quite basic," he commented, "but adequate for a developing species." Commander Torres tried to maintain dignity, despite the subtle insult. "We found that simple designs often work best in harsh environments." "Indeed," Thex Vala nodded. "We understand that less advanced civilizations must make do with limited resources and knowledge." Jake could see several crew members bristling at the comments, but they held their tongues. Lieutenant Commander Sam Parker, the station's military advisor, stepped forward. "Would you like a tour of our facilities?" "That would be educational," Kreenox replied. "We're always interested in seeing how younger species approach engineering challenges." The tour began well enough. The Zephyrians examined the station systems with polite interest, making comments about the crude but functional approach humans took to life support and power generation. Their attitude was like adults humoring children who wanted to show off their drawings. Then they reached the docking bay where the USS Valiant waited. "And this is a historical vessel we discovered," Commander Torres explained. "It's over 200 years old, from our early space exploration period." Thex Vala and Kreenox approached the massive warship with genuine curiosity. Up close, the size difference between the Valiant and the sleek Zephyrian vessels was even more dramatic. The human ship looked like a floating fortress, all thick armor and heavy construction. "May we examine it more closely?" Thex Vala asked. "We are students of military history and technology." Sam Parker hesitated, but nodded. "Of course. Captain Morrison can guide you through it." Jake led the aliens through the Valiant's corridors. Their reaction started as polite interest, but quickly turned to barely concealed amusement. Engineer Tony Blake, who had been working on the ship's systems, joined the tour. "These armor plates must be incredibly heavy," Kreenox observed, running his hand along the thick metal walls. "Surely this much mass would make the ship slow and difficult to maneuver." "Human ships from this era prioritize protection over speed," Jake explained. "A defensive mindset," Thex Vala noted. "Our philosophy has always favored mobility and superior firepower over heavy armor." When they reached the engine room, Kreenox actually laughed. "Fusion reactors. How charmingly primitive. We abandoned such crude power sources centuries ago." He pointed to various systems. "Look at these massive components. Our ships generate 10 times the power with equipment 1/10 this size." Tony Blake's jaw tightened, but he remained professional. These systems were designed for reliability and ease of maintenance. Necessary compromises when your technology is limited. Kreenox agreed condescendingly. The weapon systems drew even more amusement. "Kinetic projectile launchers," Thex Vala observed, examining what looked like enormous gun barrels, "and chemical explosive warheads. How do you say, quaint? Our modern plasma weapons would cut through this armor like it was paper," Kreenox added. "And these targeting computers look like museum pieces. We could destroy the ship before its weapons could even lock onto us." Lisa Hayes, who had been quietly following the tour, finally spoke up. "The ship served its purpose in its time." "Oh, we mean no disrespect," Thex Vala said smoothly. "Every species must start somewhere. You have clearly advanced significantly since building vessels like this. Your current ships, while still primitive by our standards, show considerable improvement." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. The aliens were not being openly insulting, but their attitude was clear. They saw humans as backward children playing with toys. The tour continued with more of the same. Every system drew comments about how crude, primitive, or outdated it was. The Zephyrians compared everything to their own superior technology, always in ways that made humans seem inferior. As they prepared to leave, Thex Vala addressed Commander Torres. "We want to assure you that the Zephyrian fleet will protect this region of space. Your people need not worry about threats while we patrol these systems." The message was clear. Humans were under Zephyrian protection because they could not protect themselves. After the aliens departed, the station was quiet for a long time. Finally, Sam Parker spoke what everyone was thinking. "Arrogant bastards. They're not wrong about our technology gap," Torres admitted reluctantly. "Their ships are clearly more advanced than anything we have." Jake looked through the window at the USS Valiant. "Maybe, but there's something about this old ship that bothers me. If it was so primitive, why was it built so heavily? What were they expecting to fight?" Tony Blake nodded slowly. "I've been going through the technical specifications. This wasn't just a warship. It was built like a fortress that could move through space. Someone spent enormous resources building something that could survive almost anything. The question is," Lisa said quietly, "what did they think was coming that required a ship like this?" As if in response to her question, deep within the Valiant systems, ancient circuits began to stir. The ship had been listening, and it remembered what it was built to fight. 2 days after the Zephyrians left, a small research ship arrived at Kepler Station. Dr. Amy Foster stepped off the transport, carrying a seal case and wearing the serious expression of someone with important secrets. She was a specialist in old human technology, the kind of person who studied weapons and ships from humanity's darker days. Commander Torres met her at the airlock. Dr. Foster, thank you for coming so quickly. I hope you can tell us more about what we found. Amy nodded grimly. The USS Valiant is not just any old warship. Commander, what you've discovered is one of the last Dreadnought-class vessels ever built. There were only 12 of them, and they were all supposed to be destroyed or lost. Jake Morrison joined them as they walked toward the docking bay. Destroyed? Why would anyone destroy ships that powerful? Because they were too dangerous, Amy replied. The Dreadnoughts were built during the worst period in human history. We were facing something that nearly wiped us out completely. These ships were our last desperate attempt to survive. She led them to the Valiant, her eyes taking in every detail of the massive vessel. People today think this ship looks primitive because they don't understand what they're looking at. Every single component was designed by people who knew that failure meant the end of everything. Lisa Hayes, who had been working on the ship systems, joined the group. I've been trying to understand the power systems. They're not like anything we use now, but they're incredibly complex. Amy opened her seal case and pulled out data chips and technical manuals. The reactors aren't just fusion systems. They're fusion antimatter hybrids. The people who built this ship found ways to contain and use antimatter that we've forgotten how to do safely. Tony Blake looked skeptical. Antimatter? That's incredibly dangerous. One small mistake, and you could blow up half a solar system. Exactly, Amy said. That's how desperate humanity was. We were willing to put city-killing weapons inside our own ships because the alternative was extinction. She pulled up technical drawings on a portable screen. Look at this armor plating. The Zephyrians laugh at how thick it is, but they don't understand what it's made of. It's not just metal. It's a composite of rare earth elements designed to absorb massive amount of energy and channel it into the ship's power grid. Jake studied the diagrams. You mean enemy weapons actually make the ship stronger? Up to a point, yes. The more energy you pour into this armor, the more power the ship has to work with. It was designed to fight enemies with energy weapons far more powerful than anything the Zephyrians showed us. Lisa was examining the technical specifications with growing amazement. These weapon systems, they're not primitive at all. They're just completely different from what we use now. Amy nodded. Modern military thinking focuses on precise, efficient weapons. The Dreadnoughts were built for total war against an enemy that wouldn't surrender. Every weapon system is designed to cause maximum destruction. Commander Torres looked worried. Dr. Foster, what exactly were these ships built to fight? What was so dangerous that humanity had to create weapons like this? Amy's expression grew dark. That information is still classified, even after 2 centuries. All I can tell you is that Earth faced something that conventional weapons couldn't stop. The Dreadnoughts were our answer to an enemy that seemed invincible. She walked over to a console that had been dark since they found the ship. The most important thing about the Valiant is that she's not really dead. She's been sleeping, waiting for someone to wake her up properly. Amy connected her equipment to the console and began entering codes that had been locked away for centuries. Each Dreadnought had an artificial intelligence designed to run the ship in combat. They were more advanced than anything we have today. The console suddenly came to life with lights and displays. A calm female voice spoke from hidden speakers throughout the ship. Systems awakening. Running full diagnostic. Identity confirmed. USS Valiant, Dreadnought class. AI designation, Liberty. Everyone on the bridge stood frozen as the ancient ship's mind returned to consciousness. More systems activated as Liberty took control of her vessel. The lights grew brighter, and they could hear the deep hum of powerful engines warming up. Liberty, Amy said carefully, "This is Dr. Amy Foster, Human Military Research Division. Can you understand me?" "Dr. Foster, I understand you perfectly. Current date requested." Amy provided the date, and there was a long pause. "I have been inactive for 237 years, for months and 16 days. Last combat engagement, classified. Current threat assessment requested." Jake stepped forward. "There's no immediate threat, Liberty. We're at a research station, and we've had peaceful contact with an alien species called the Zephyrians. Zephyrians? Not in my database. Threat level unknown. Recommend full weapons diagnostic and crew readiness protocols. The ship began running checks on every system. Weapons that had been silent for centuries started moving and calibrating. The massive gun barrels rotated slowly, their targeting systems sweeping the area around the station. Liberty, Amy said urgently, "We're not in combat. Please stand down weapons." Understood, Dr. Foster. Weapon systems on standby. However, I detect that foreign personnel recently accessed this vessel. Security protocols recommend immediate crew briefing on potential threats. Lisa looked at the engineering displays with growing amazement. The power output is incredible. These systems are running at levels our modern ships can't even reach. Liberty's voice continued. Full diagnostic complete. All primary systems operational. Armor integrity at 96%. Weapon systems at full capacity. Reactor efficiency at optimal levels. USS Valiant ready for combat operations. Tony Blake shook his head in disbelief. After more than 2 centuries, everything still works? Dreadnought-class vessels were designed for extended operations without maintenance, Liberty explained. All critical systems have multiple redundancies and self-repair capabilities. Amy turned to Commander Torres. "Commander, I need to send a message to Earth Command immediately. They need to know that a dreadnought is operational again." "Is that good or bad?" Torres asked. "That depends on what's coming," Amy replied grimly. "The dreadnoughts were never retired because the war ended. They were retired because we won, but barely. If Liberty is awake, there might be a reason." Jake looked around at the awakening ship. Every surface now showed active displays and readouts. The Valiant was transforming from a dead relic into a living weapon of war. "Liberty, what were you built to fight?" "That information is classified, Captain Morrison. However, I can tell you that the Dreadnought class was humanity's response to an existential threat. We were designed to fight enemies that conventional weapons could not defeat. And if such an enemy appeared again, Liberty's response was immediate and chilling. The USS Valiant stands ready to defend humanity, regardless of the cost." As the ship's systems continued to activate, none of them noticed the long-range sensors detecting approaching ships. The Zephyrian fleet was returning, and this time they were bringing more vessels. War Commander Thexvala had been thinking about the primitive human warship, and he had decided to demonstrate just how superior Zephyrian technology really was. The sleeping giant was awake, and soon the galaxy would learn why humanity had built ships like the USS Valiant. The warning came at dawn when Danny Rodriguez was monitoring the long-range sensors. "Commander Torres, we have multiple contacts approaching fast. It's the Zephyrians, and they brought friends." Helen Torres rushed to the control room, still putting on her uniform jacket. "How many ships?" 15 vessels total. 3 of them are much larger than the ships we saw before. The rest look like escort fighters." Danny's voice was tight with worry. "They'll be here in 2 hours." In the docking bay, Captain Jake Morrison was running final checks on the USS Valiant systems with Liberty's help. The AI had spent the past day bringing more weapons online and training a skeleton crew of volunteers to operate the ancient but powerful ship. "Liberty, what's our status?" Jake asked as he settled into the captain's chair. The bridge felt huge compared to his old cargo ship, with enough stations for 50 crew members. All primary systems operational. "Captain, however, I must point out that we have a crew of only 8 people. This vessel was designed to operate with a full crew of 200. Lisa Hayes looked up from the engineering station. She was learning to operate. "Can we fight with so few people?" "I can handle most ship operations automatically," Liberty replied. "Your crew will focus on damage control and tactical decisions. I recommend Captain Morrison retain overall command while I manage weapons and navigation." Tony Blake was struggling with the massive weapon control systems. "These targeting computers are nothing like what I'm used to. Everything is so complicated." "The complexity is necessary," Liberty explained patiently. "Each weapon system can engage multiple targets simultaneously while calculating trajectory enemy movement, and optimal destruction patterns. Commander Torres contacted them from the station. "Jake, the Zephyrian fleet has arrived. Their leader wants to speak with us." On the main screen, Fleet Admiral Vextar appeared. He was larger than the previous Zephyrians, with more decorations and an air of absolute authority. Behind him, the bridge of his command ship was sleek and modern, filled with advanced technology. "Humans of Kepler Station," Vextar began, his voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "We have received reports that you have activated an ancient warship. This vessel poses a navigation hazard and must be disabled immediately." Torres tried to keep her voice steady. "Admiral, the USS Valiant is under our control and poses no threat to peaceful vessels." "You misunderstand, Commander. We are not requesting. We are informing you of our decision. Your primitive vessel will be disabled for the safety of all space traffic in this region." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Admiral, that ship is a piece of human history. We won't let you destroy it." Vextar's expression showed mild amusement. "Captain Morrison, is it? We do not intend to destroy your relic. We will simply disable its weapons and engines to prevent any accidents. Our technology is far superior to your ancient systems. The process will be quick and painless." "And if we refuse?" Torres asked. "Then we will be forced to demonstrate the difference between modern military technology and primitive human engineering. I assure you, the lesson will be brief." The transmission ended, and the Zephyrian fleet moved into attack formation. The 3 large cruisers positioned themselves around Kepler Station, while the smaller ships formed a protective screen. Liberty's voice filled the Valiant's bridge. "Captain, the enemy fleet is preparing to engage. Their weapon signatures indicate plasma-based energy systems, approximately 10 times more powerful than standard human military equipment." Jake looked around at his tiny crew. Lisa at engineering, Tony at weapons, Danny at communications, Sam Parker at tactical, and 4 other volunteers at various stations. Against 15 advanced alien warships, they looked pathetically outnumbered. "Liberty, what are our chances?" "Unknown, Captain. I have no combat data on Zephyrian vessels. However, the USS Valiant was designed to engage superior numbers of technologically advanced enemies. That's not exactly comforting. Captain, if I may offer historical perspective, the Dreadnought class was never built to fight fair battles. We were designed to win against impossible odds." Jake took a deep breath and opened a channel to the Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Valiant. Your ships are in violation of human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Laughter came through the communication system. "Captain, you cannot be serious. Your ancient relic against our modern fleet? This will be over before it begins." The first Zephyrian cruiser moved closer to the Valiant, its plasma cannons charging with bright blue energy. "We will disable your weapons first, then your engines. Please do not make this more difficult than necessary." Jake gripped his command chair. "All stations, prepare for combat. Liberty, you have control of defensive systems." "Understood, Captain. Recommend we allow the enemy to fire first. Their initial attack will provide valuable data on their weapon capabilities." The Zephyrian cruiser opened fire with both plasma cannons, sending streams of superheated energy directly at the Valiant's hull. The crew braced for impact, expecting massive damage. Instead, the thick armor plating absorbed the plasma bolts like a sponge absorbing water. The energy disappeared into the composite metal, and the ship's power readings actually increased. "Direct hit on target," reported the Zephyrian gunner. "No visible damage. Impossible. Increasing power to maximum." The second barrage was twice as powerful as the first. Again, the ancient armor absorbed the energy completely. Liberty's voice remained calm. "Enemy weapons are ineffective. Power reserves now at 115% of normal capacity." Admiral Vextar's voice crackled over the communication system. "What kind of armor is that? Our plasma cannons should have melted through your hull." Jake smiled grimly. "The kind of armor built by people who knew they might face weapons exactly like yours. Admiral, Liberty, show them what the USS Valiant was really built for." With pleasure, Captain. Engaging combat protocols. All crew members, prepare for full weapons engagement. The massive gun barrels on the Valiant hull began to rotate, their targeting systems locking onto the Zephyrian ships. Deep within the ship, the fusion antimatter reactors increased their output to combat levels. The ancient warship that had been mocked as a primitive relic was about to show the galaxy what human military engineering could accomplish when survival was at stake. Liberty's voice carried a note of anticipation that was almost human. Weapons charged and ready, Captain. The USS Valiant is prepared to demonstrate why humanity builds its warships to last. The first shot from the USS Valiant shook space itself. The massive railgun fired projectile the size of a car at nearly the speed of light. The round punched through the lead Zephyrian cruiser's shields like they were made of paper, tore through the hull, and exited the other side in a shower of metal and sparks. Admiral Vextar stared in shock as his flagship sister ship went dark, drifting helplessly with a hole clean through its center. Impossible. Our shield should have stopped any kinetic weapon. Liberty's calm voice filled the Valiant's bridge. First target disabled. Adjusting targeting parameters based on enemy shield frequency. Recommend engaging remaining targets before they can adapt their defenses. Jake Morrison felt the deck vibrate as the ship's main guns rotated to track new targets. Liberty, what did we just fire at them? Depleted uranium projectile accelerated to 92% light speed, Captain. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. Tony Blake looked up from his weapons console with wide eyes. And we have how many of those? Ammunition reserves are sufficient for extended combat operations, Liberty replied. However, I recommend we demonstrate our full capabilities to encourage enemy surrender. The second Zephyrian cruiser fired everything it had at the Valiant. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion missiles struck the ancient warship's armor. The energy was absorbed and channeled into the ship's power grid, making the lights burn brighter. Their weapons are charging our batteries. Lisa Hayes reported from engineering. Power levels are now at 130%. Excellent. Liberty said with what sounded like satisfaction. Activating secondary weapon systems. Ports open along the Valiant's hull, revealing missile launchers that had been hidden behind armor panels. Dozens of projectiles streaked toward the Zephyrian fleet, moving faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. Incoming missiles, reported a Zephyrian tactical officer, attempting to intercept with point defense systems. Their defensive fire was useless. The human missiles were not guided by simple computers, but by miniature artificial intelligences that adapted their flight paths in real time. Each warhead carried a fusion bomb powerful enough to crack a moon. The first missile struck the second Zephyrian cruiser directly in its reactor section. The explosion lit up space like a tiny star, and when the light faded, half the ship was gone. The rest tumbled away, leaking atmosphere and radiation. 2 enemy capital ships disabled. Liberty announced. Remaining vessels are attempting to retreat. Recommend pursuit to prevent regrouping. Admiral Vextar's voice came over the communication system. No longer arrogant, but desperate. Cease fire. We surrender. Your weapons are beyond anything we imagined. Jake felt the weight of command as he made his decision. Liberty, hold fire but maintain target locks. Admiral, your fleet will remain in position while we discuss terms. Terms. Vextar sounded confused. But you've already won. We cannot fight weapons like these. The remaining Zephyrian ships hung motionless in space, their crews staring at the massive human warship that had destroyed 2 advanced cruisers in less than a minute. The escorts had not even tried to engage after seeing what happened to the larger vessels. Dr. Amy Foster's voice came from the station. Jake, Earth Command is demanding a full report. They're sending a fleet to investigate. Tell them the situation is under control, Jake replied. And tell them the USS Valiant is ready for active duty again. Admiral Vextar requested permission to board the human station. An hour later, he stood in Kepler Station's conference room, looking like a defeated warrior. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by the humility of someone who had seen his entire worldview destroyed. I do not understand, he said quietly. Your ship appeared primitive to us. We laughed at your thick armor and crude weapons. How were we so wrong? Commander Torres gestured to the technical displays showing the Valiant specifications. You saw what you expected to see, Admiral. You thought heavy armor meant slow and clumsy. You thought big weapons meant primitive targeting. Jake Morrison entered the room, still wearing his captain's uniform from the ancient warship. Admiral, let me explain something about human engineering. We don't build things to look impressive. We build them to work when everything else fails. But your technology is centuries old, Vextar protested. How can it be superior to our modern systems? Dr. Foster spoke up from her position near the wall. Because it was built by people who had no choice but to succeed. Every component of that ship was designed by humans who knew that failure meant extinction. The armor you mocked, Jay continued, was created to absorb energy from weapons more powerful than yours and turn that energy into fuel for our own systems. The thick hull you called primitive is actually a composite of rare metals that took our entire industrial capacity to produce. Lisa Hayes pulled up engineering diagrams. Your plasma weapons are efficient and precise. Our weapons are designed to destroy anything they hit completely and permanently. When you're fighting for survival, efficiency is less important than total destruction. Admiral Vextar studied the displays showing the Valiant's true capabilities. Your missiles, they think for themselves. Each one has an AI brain, Tony Blake explained. They can outsmart your defensive systems because they're actually smarter than your defensive systems. And the main guns? Vextar asked quietly. Railguns powered by fusion antimatter reactors, Jake replied. They can punch holes through planets if necessary. When humanity built the Dreadnought class, we weren't planning to fight other ships. We were planning to fight an enemy that could eat entire star systems. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. We came here thinking you were a primitive species that needed our protection. We were going to treat you as a protectorate, like children who needed guidance. And now, Commander Torres asked, now I understand that we were the children, Vextar replied. You built weapons of war that we cannot comprehend, then put them aside when the danger passed. What kind of species builds ultimate weapons and then chooses not to use them? The kind that learned the hard way that survival sometimes requires terrible choices, Jake answered. We built ships like the Valiant because we had to. We retired them because we could. The difference is important. Admiral Vextar stood and formally saluted. The Zephyrian fleet requests permission to establish peaceful relations with humanity. We offer our friendship and our respect. Granted, Torres replied. But understand this, Admiral. The USS Valiant is not unique. There are other dreadnoughts drifting in space, waiting to be awakened if humanity ever needs them again. As the Zephyrian fleet departed to carry word of humanity's true nature throughout the galaxy, Liberty's voice echoed to the Valiant's corridors. Captain Morrison, Earth Command has authorized full reactivation of the Dreadnought program. They want to know if the USS Valiant is ready to resume Guardian duties. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the other sleeping giants that might be floating in the darkness. Tell them we're ready, Liberty. Humanity's Guardians are awake again. The ancient warship powered up to full operational status. No longer a relic, but a reminder that sometimes the old ways are the best ways, and that underestimating humanity is a mistake no one should make twice.